Okay, namaste everyone. Thank you for joining in. So I wanted to have this class yesterday, but due to some internet issues, I could not do it. Okay. Anyways, Shannon, I have something to speak with you. I'll call you after the class, all right? And so we had,
Okay.
so we had completed Rahu and Ketu in the first and second houses. We had also looked at a few example charts so that we could validate what we were learning. Okay. So today we'll be looking at Rahu and the psychology of Rahu in the third house. All right. And as always, let's begin with the daily Shanti mantra of the Upanishads. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunakatu Saha Viryankara Vavahai Tejasvinadadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Yeah. All right. So Kala Sarpa with Rahu in the third house. Okay. So what does the third house want? Or what does the third house represent? It represents what you want, your desires, and the needs that drive you. Okay, that is the third house. All right. And it is an Upachaya house, of course. Okay. And generally, Rahu in the Upachaya houses. What are the Upachaya houses? The third, the sixth, and the 11th. Okay, even the 10th house is an Upachaya house. But in the third, sixth, and 11th, Rahu is very, very promising. Okay, because Rahu is the great reflector. So it reflects the wants and needs that drive human nature. Okay, and what does Rahu represent? Rahu represents desire and obsession. Whereas Ketu, it denotes ambivalence and detachment. Okay, so with Rahu in the third and Ketu in the ninth, this placement usually indicates a bias for creative expression of radical ideas, sometimes at the cost of traditional moral values, religious principles, or rules of law. Okay, some of the greatest spiritualists who make a difference in the world of spirituality, they are born with this axis. Okay, with Rahu in the third and Ketu in the ninth. All right, so it is a it is a placement which leads to a lot of creative expression. Okay, and third house is also the house of courage. So Rahu, it is the second most courageous planet. Okay, which is the most courageous planet? It is Mars. Okay, Rahu is the second most courageous planet, and there is a difference in the way how Rahu operates and how Mars operates. Okay, so Mars and Rahu coming together is Sarpa Badha. Okay, it's a Sarpa Badha. Why? Because Mars represents the commander of the army. Okay, in the planetary cabinet, and Rahu and Ketu are the soldiers. All right, so a soldier placed with the general, it represents Badha. Okay, it is Sarpa Badha. And what is the difference between the courage of Mars and the courage of Rahu? For example, say it's a battle where you are alone and the enemy has 100 soldiers. The courage of Mars is such that it will just jump into that battle. Okay, it will just jump into that battle, thinking that I may be killed in this war, but with me, I'll kill 10 more people or maybe 50 more people. Okay, even if I die, I don't care. I'll kill 50 more of, in the battle. That is the attitude of Mars. Rahu, on the other hand, he will also go to war, but he will not show himself. He will call all the 100 people together, somehow assemble them. Maybe he will come and show himself and then assemble, wait for the 100 people to assemble. And then he will use some kind of, forgery or deceit to kill all of them at once and himself escape in the process. Okay, so that is the difference between Rahu and Mars. Mars is very courageous. Rahu is deceitful yet very courageous. Okay, so this Rahu in the third house makes the person very, very courageous. Okay, and since Rahu is a Vata provoking planet, it makes the native very, very restless. Okay, the hands might be fidgety. Okay, and the native may be unable to sit still. All right. And because because the third house, it rules the upper arms. Okay, so the native may have powerful arms, a strong grip, or even a strong upper body strength. Okay, and usually there could be some unusual birth markings on the arms. For example, a birthmark that appeared at a very young age because of some accident or something. Okay, or even the native may be fond of getting a tattoo, perhaps the image of a snake, because of Rahu's iconography. Okay, so sometimes the native may also get a tattoo that may bear a message in the form of some aphorism. Okay, and because Rahu is obscure, the message may be written in Sanskrit or Chinese, or maybe a character set which is unrecognizable by most. Okay, the third house is also the house of hearing. Okay, so this Rahu in the third, it can indicate a hearing deficiency or ear infection. Okay, and since Rahu also rules technology, the native may be partially deaf, that may be corrected with a hearing aid. Okay, and Rahu also represents the shock factor. Okay, Rahu wants you to get shocked at seeing him. Okay, so fashion wise, the native may favor some unusual earrings, or maybe outrageous ear piercings, or maybe some dress that makes the onlookers just stand by and look at the native for a while. Okay, and the third house also rules the lungs. Okay, and since Rahu is a virulent malefic, so it can actually indicate bronchial complaints. Okay, and other diseases may also be there in the native, and the range may be from mild to serious. Okay, these diseases may be asthma or bronchitis. Okay, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and even lung cancer in some cases. Okay, now pranayama is an appropriate antidote for someone who is having Rahu in the third. Okay, why? Because Rahu is irregular and spastic, and as a result, the breath may often be ragged and shallow. Okay, so what does pranayama do? It obliges one to slow the breathing, measure it out, and take deep breaths and expel the air fully. Okay, so pranayama is recommended for regulating the respiratory system, for reinvigorating the body, and for calming the mind. Okay, because you can do a lot of work with the breath. Okay, but only pranayama. Okay, not kapal bhati. I've been careful enough not to mention kapal bhati. Okay, kapal bhati actually makes you breathe like a dog. Okay, pranayama is taking those breaths very, very royally. Yes, you are exhaling, you're doing a long inhalation, and then you know yeah, yeah. You be doing long inhalation and then long exhalation. So it's a very royal way of breathing, pranayama. Kapal bhati, it actually makes you breathe like a dog. Okay, and if you breathe like a dog, you'll have emotions of a dog. Okay, so don't do kapal bhati, no matter whatever the circumstances are. People have recommended kapal bhati as a remedy to Saturn, and even I have been guilty of doing that in the past when I was not into tantra. Okay, I used to recommend kapal bhati to people, and then when I did it myself, I realized that I was actually thinking like a dog, having the low emotions of a dog. So don't do kapal bhati unless and until you start, you want to become a dog yourself. Okay, no hard feelings though. Yeah, so the tattoo thing is real, unbelievable. Yeah, because Navamsha is the real you. Okay, Navamsha is the real you. Yeah, so anyway,
It's not of a snake though. It's like a phoenix.
yeah, but it
Yeah.
has the tail of a snake, right? The phoenix is rising from the ashes, so it
Oh,
has the tail of a snake.
yeah, it's actually a burning phoenix. So it's
Yeah,
rebirth in the bottom of it.
yeah. So Navamsha is the real you, no? Navamsha is the real you. Who are you in reality? That is the Navamsha. Also the Dwadasamsha to some extent. But Navamsha is who are you in real. Rashi is just the personality that you put up in front of the
Which
world.
one is the daughter Damsha again?
It is the D12. Okay, the
D12.
D12.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the
All right.
Dwadasamsha. But Navamsha is the real you. You know, who are you in reality? D1 is just the personality, how life is unfolding for you, and what is contributing to building your personality. Navamsha is what you are in actual.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the third house also rules movement or locomotion. So, because of Rahu's presence in the third house, so the native may be very, very restless and maybe be inclined to wander from one place to the other. Okay. Such a native can be prone to frequent short jaunts. Okay. They may keep jaunting from one place to another, and they may be fond of taking unplanned trips and maybe also fond of journeying to foreign places. Okay. And if Rahu is afflicted, such a native may suffer from abrupt relocations. Okay, that means one day he or she is here, the next day somewhere else, and so on. Okay, now Rahu is the graha of enterprise and innovation. Okay, Rahu is the highest innovator. He is like that Dr. X who is researching in his lab. Okay, that is the reason Aquarius represents that research lab, and Rahu feels at home in Aquarius. Okay, so because Rahu is enterprising and innovative, so in the third house, the native can make his own thing happen. Okay, he may bully or even strong arm people into doing things for his own benefit. But then, Rahu also has the potential for blowback and reversal. It means, a strong Rahu person may end up shooting himself or herself in the foot. So that may become a kind of detriment for the native. Okay, so Rahu is all about, thinking out of the box because Rahu is innovative. Okay, but then, sometimes the native's ideas are so out of the ordinary that, working within a traditional business context may be a challenge, a big one. Okay, and since Rahu is non-traditional, the native gets involved in enterprises that are odd, kooky, and experimental. Okay, and yet the native feels the urge, feels the appeal to boldly go wherever no one has gone before. Okay, and since the third house also rules desire along with the 11th house, the native may have peculiar passions. Okay, and by passions I don't mean they need to be sexual. Maybe it is just an existential desire to live something out of the ordinary. Okay, but then the third house is also the Maithuna Bhava. Okay, the third house, original third house is Mithuna, Gemini, and the word Mithuna, it actually comes from Maithuna. What is Maithuna? Maithuna means sexual copulation. Okay, so the third house is a Kamasthana. So a deep sexual desire may also be present. Okay, and this could arouse the person to seek gratification via experiences that others might consider abnormal. Okay, so for example, I have Rahu in the third house of my Navamsha. Okay, so I get deeply aroused by the smell of
Wow.
mud. Okay, I get deeply aroused by the smell of mud. Okay,
Oh,
so what happens is, as a child, I used to consume mud because the feeling, the taste was so arousing, the aroma was so arousing. And then, I used to go all muddy. My mouth used to be all muddy, and then my mother used to look at it, and then she used to
I
slap the.
used to eat chalk.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
teachers will be looking for the chalk. I ate it all.
yeah, yeah. Even I had this experiences with chalk. So because the smell would be so arousing, the aroma would be so arousing. So that is how it happens. Anyways, so the third house also rules siblings and neighbors, and since Rahu is erratic and lawless, so this suggests rebellious or wandering siblings who may have substance abuse issues, or maybe non-traditional sexual orientation. Maybe you have siblings who are gay or lesbians. Okay, or maybe your siblings have mental disorders, or maybe your neighbors have mental disorders or foreign affiliations. Okay, and it can also, if Rahu is afflicted, it can also spell trouble with neighbors who are, maybe party animals or drunks or drug dealers or drug users, maybe. Okay, so since this Rahu Ketu axis cuts through the third and ninth houses, it can actually create disturbance in the family. Okay, primarily affecting siblings, but also the father. Okay, so for instance, for example, a pattern of addiction could actually implicate either family member. Okay, and if the father is the one who is most affected by this, axis, then it can cause a family rift. Okay, why? Because faced with the addiction of the father, the mother might feel a lot of pressure against all odds. Okay, maybe to the pressure would be to hold a debilitated marriage together, and such a strain could actually result in divorce. Okay, sometimes because of Ketu's presence in the ninth house, the father may be dysfunctional and might behave in ways that make a marital relationship quite difficult. Okay, and the native might develop ambivalent feelings about the father, because Ketu in the ninth can provoke feelings of resignation. Okay, and this kind of dissolution of the family can leave the person with a bad impression of relationships, especially in which the father's role is, or how the father's role is viewed or looked at. Okay, and sometimes problems can arise regarding disposition of property or vehicles. Okay, for example, siblings may challenge division of family property. Okay, and sometimes the native might enter into verbal agreements which are misunderstood, and that could result in unfulfilled expectations. Okay, there could be discrepancies in offers to purchase or deeds of sale, land transfer document, or even wills that distribute property via inheritance. Okay, so the best way is to have a lawyer to examine the documents and clarify the situation. Okay, don't save on lawyers. If you have this placement, if you are doing some legal work, please take the help of a lawyer. It will go a long way in saving you a lot of trouble later on. I have learned this the hard way, so I'm telling my experience. Okay, now Rahu in the third house also has a great passion for communication. Okay, for conversation, for interpretation, narratives, and signals of any kind. Okay, and how does the native communicate? The native will communicate through diagrams, descriptions, hand gestures, photographs. Okay, maybe the native will be fond of writing verbal and written reports, because the ears as primary receptors will also act as messengers to deliver the news. Okay, but then Rahu is foreign. Rahu is the foreign element. Rahu is irregular, so the native may actually end up presenting reports that may be garbled, or laden with subliminal meaning, or maybe lost in translation, or maybe simply false. If this Rahu is highly afflicted, the native can actually present false reports. For example, I have done this quite often. I have presented false reports at work, and then ended up getting in more trouble because I had to find ways to justify how I produced that false report. Okay, but as I said, you have to be very, very careful with dealing with this Rahu in the third. Okay, you need to be careful in dealing with Rahu's influence anyways. Okay, and as I said in the last class on Jyotish Foundation, Saturn is it is maybe a existential mistake that Saturn is regarded to be the most maligned or the most evil of planets. Unfortunately, Saturn is not the most evil planet. Okay, it is the easiest planet to maneuver if you know how to deal with your Saturn, if you know how to let go of things, of situations, of people. The only problem that you have to solve in this life is your Rahu Ketu axis in the D1. Okay, that is the only problem you need to solve. If you solve the Rahu Ketu axis, the other planets will fall in line. As simple as that. Okay, it depends on how you are using astrology. People have a lot of things about saying how Saturn is so good, how how Jupiter is so bad, or rather how Jupiter is so good and Saturn is so bad. But the real problem that everyone ignores is the Rahu Ketu axis. You need to solve this Rahu Ketu axis by any means if you have to, if you have to sort your life in order. Okay. All right. So Rahu also might have an ambition to influence or gain favor, from siblings, from neighbors, from team members, and other co-equals. Okay, and sometimes such influence may be offered from within the context of business transactions, instructions, maybe marketing, maybe multiculturalism, propaganda, publishing, social media, and so on. Okay, now these natives, they want to be recognized as an authority. Okay, so these people, they spare no effort in their craft, and they fully utilize technology to deliver their message in form or content. Okay, in effect, such a native can seek immortality through his medium. All right, and this is something that also happened to me. I was not seeking immortality. I got that, I stumbled upon that when my guru said that, okay, I can make you immortal. But I was not seeking immortality, but I was seeking, some way to become authoritative in whatever I was doing. Okay, so as I said, the native can seek immortality through his or her medium, and that immortality could be sought by being the best in the field. Okay, maybe as a writer. Okay, because third house is the house of writing. And what kind of writing skills does it indicate? Maybe you are working as a highly paid biographer. Okay, copywriting is another skill that was very much in vogue until the artificial intelligence AI kicked in, and now copywriters will be jobless. Okay, Chat GPT. Then documentarist, journalist, lyricist, novelist. Okay, public relations spokesperson. These are all the professions that third house Rahu wants to indulge in. Okay, the native will also be very good at script writing. Okay, speech writing, or even as a technical writer or translator, the native can do well. Okay, now because the third house is also the kamasthana, as I said, it is the maithuna bhava. Okay, the word maithuna, mithuna, which is the Sanskrit word for Gemini, it comes from the word maithuna, which means sexual copulation. Okay, so because the third house is also the kamasthana and also the house of communication, so the communications of the native may have a relational bias. For example, the native may end up promoting subtle sexual contact. Okay, maybe the native will be a flirt using gestures as well as words. Okay, so maybe the native will indulge in double meaning talk to convey a message that can be interpreted on more than one level. Okay, so what it does is it suggests a flair for erotica. Okay, in the form of drawings or photography or writing. All right, and since Rahu is also the iconoclast, the native's communication skills may be applied to breaking taboos. Okay, the native may provoke discussion of forbidden topics. For example, homosexuality, racism, sexual abuse, women's rights, etc. Women's rights is not so forbidden, but for some people, these things are not to be uttered in the public. But for a native having Rahu in the third and Ketu in the ninth, these discussions may be commonplace. Okay, now Rahu also signifies foreigners and outcasts. Okay, so the native may document or report on the condition of immigrants, maybe the homeless, the LGBTQ community, people who are mentally ill, or maybe those who are suffering from AIDS and other diseases. Okay, and there may be natives who may have evangelistical aspects to their communication. Okay, these people, they make the best of evangelists. All right, people who go to maybe Africa or wild wild parts of Amazon just to spread the message of the Christ. Okay, so such messages may be viewed as propaganda by some, but by others it can be a necessary prelude to truth and reconciliation. Okay, and who else have these combination? Who are the people who have this combination of Rahu in the third and Ketu in the ninth? The whistleblowers. Okay, for example, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, yes, or even Chelsea Manning. So these people, they reflected a desire to overthrow the status quo through leaked communications, and Rahu is an expert in doing that. Okay, and Rahu is often very challenging. Rahu is very challenging of conventional culture. Rahu challenges conventional culture. So the native may express strange ideas, sometimes obliquely, as in satire, where situations may be blown out of proportion to make a point. Okay, so for example, when I was there was a time when I was engaged in some kind of a debate on how to eradicate pornography from the society, and I came up with an idea that if parents they start roaming naked in front of children, 90% of pornography would be eradicated. And if you look at it, it's actually a fact, because all pornography starts with the with the desire to see people in nude. Okay, so I suggested that point that if parents start being naked in front of their children from a very young age, then we can actually eliminate 90% of the pornography. And although the judges, they liked my suggestion, but it was such a it was such an offensive suggestion according to some, that the entire debate, it just went off. Okay, and people were fighting, and why would you say that, why would I how dare you say that, and this and that, and why, and I was just wondering, what did I say? Yeah, it was not a bad thing that I suggested. It was maybe pretty iconoclastic, but it can be implemented if you want to implement it. Okay, so this is something that I was referring to. Okay, when I say that challenging conventional culture. Okay, just try saying this in front of people who are very, very traditional, and they would actually take you to be a criminal. Okay, and at the end of the debate, which never happened after I put that suggestion, all the eyes were pointing to me as if I was a criminal. And then I thought that, oh my God, this is some shit that I have created. And I made my good escape, nevertheless, because Rahu is also good at escaping. Yeah. So Rahu represents the foreign. Okay. So the language of a native may not be decipherable by a lay person. Okay. Sometimes the native may have a facility for shorthand or for writing computer code or translation of foreign languages or even cryptography. Okay. And this actually happened to me when I was a teenager. I used to speak so fast that people could not recognize what I was speaking. Okay, it was English, but of course they thought that I was speaking in some different language. And then one lady professor, she advised me to go slow, and she said that there is no coherence between what you think and what you speak, so you need to really slow down, I think. And I implemented it, and by God's grace it came off. Okay. So with this placement, there is a typical concept of mixed message that is reflected by the native. Okay. And since Rahu also represents the fork tongue, together with Mercury, Rahu also represents the head of the serpent. So this head is at work in the house of communications. Okay. So, we have people in the media who are fabricators, who are liars, who are, tail spinners. They can take a serious topic and spin it in and give it a completely different context. So Rahu in the third represents these people. Okay. We have all heard about Goebbels and how he was used as the minister of propaganda by Hitler. So even Goebbels had this combination of Rahu in the third house, if you look at his chart. Okay. So if a propaganda is spun and doctored out of proportions, it is known as a Goebbelsque propaganda. That is the honor of Conway. Yes. So if propaganda is doctored and spun in a very bad way, it is known as a Goebbelsque propaganda. Okay, every political party uses it, but this is about Rahu in the third. All right, it's a propaganda machine. The person can turn into a propaganda machine. Okay. Now Rahu also symbolizes snake oil, so it means that the native has a capacity for false advertising. Okay, or false communication or marketing, especially in industries such as tobacco, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, and medicine. Okay. And especially this happens in medicine. Okay, because you don't know what medicine works and what does not work. You can only verify it after consuming it. So if a medicine is there, these are the people who can actually sell sugar tablets in the name of medicines that can elongate your that can say elongate your sexual organ. I have seen that person. I've seen such a person. Okay, he was selling sugar tablets brand or disguised as medicines that can elongate your sexual organ. Okay, and people consume that medicine and nothing happened, because nothing really happens when you consume sugar tablets. They're just like homeopathic medicines. Okay, so this is Rahu in the third, all the negative parts. Yeah. Now these natives can be very charismatic and convincing as salespeople. Okay, but the marketing hype masks an opportunistic business person. Okay, such a native may use hand gestures to make a point, but the message he offers may be open to misinterpretation. Okay, and he or she could have difficulty with education. Okay, whose deficit might result in problems with career and social status. And sometimes these natives, they tend to be loner, unpopular. Okay, with an anemic social circle. This usually happens when Rahu is aspected by Saturn. Okay, and in both education and social activity, these natives have to make special efforts to succeed. Okay, the third house is also the house of skills, which is known as Kala in Sanskrit. So the person may demonstrate a remarkable dexterity, especially if Rahu is joined Mercury, or if Rahu is in the signs of Mercury. Okay, so musicmanship is one possible avenue, and because Rahu represents the foreign element, so the native may be attracted to unusual instruments, for example the bagpipe, or the balalika, or the bouzouki, or the harmonium, or the marimba, or the sitar, the veena, the oud, the zithar, etc. Okay, and the native may also use his hands in some trained capacity. Okay, for example to entertain or heal. Okay, for example, when I heal people who come to me with cancer, I usually use my hands. Okay, not because I am fond of using my hands, but because when I use my hands, even if I'm not doing anything with my hands, people think that okay, I'm healing them. the disease is being taken away. It has nothing to do with my hands. It has everything to do with my imagination, mind you. But using the hands actually makes me appear more convincing. And maybe this is true for those having Rahu in the third house and those who use their hands very often. It makes them appear very convincing. Okay, so the professions that are also indicated by this is the athlete, the chiropractor. Okay, I have a desire to learn chiropractic in America, but maybe that will happen at some point of time. Okay, then the juggler or even massage therapists. Okay, so these are the professions that are indicated by Rahu in the third, apart from writers and biographers and script writers. All right, now the third house and ninth house, they relate to travel. Okay, third house represents short distance travel and ninth house represents long distance travel. So the nodal axis to these houses could bring benefits to tourism, okay, whether it is mundane or spiritual. And sometimes, I've seen people having Rahu in the third who have actually started tour agencies that offer pilgrimage packages to people. Okay, and such people are usually very successful. Okay, if you can open a tour agency that offers pilgrimage packages, for example, in India we have the Char Dham Yatra. Yes, for elderly people, there are 4 spiritual places, and there are packages that are offered by various companies. All right, so one can be successful in that if it is used in a proper way. Okay, so of course, the nodes themselves, they don't produce results. They are influenced by the sign and also by other malefics or benefics, who aspect them. Okay, so this influence of malefics or benefics on the nodes will create a bias for positive or negative experience. Okay, so this is about Rahu in the third house. I tried to reveal as much as possible. Let me know if there is something left out. If I left out something, we'll not continue with K2 today. We'll be doing that on Saturday along with the example charts. Any questions still here?
No. Good.
Okay. Yeah. All right then. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you on Saturday for the Kala Sarpa class of K2 in the 9th and with the example charts. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Namaste. Om Gurave Namah.